and welcome to the Blues Kind Show. We have a coach. On today's episode, I'm going to go through Josh Fraser's journey to get here, why I think it was a good appointment, a little reservation that I have, and where we need to go from here. Let's get into it. I was actually able to find a photo of Josh smiling, which, given his even temperament, was hard to do, except when Harry Dean kicks a goal and he does one of those ones. But got a big happy big fella next to my head. Josh started his career in the AFL in 1999 when he was the number one draft pick in that particular year's draft. He played 200 games for the Magpies between 2000 and 2010. Following this, he moved to the Suns, where he played 18 games across 2011 and 2012. Following his playing career, he completed his Level 2 coaching course and began as the Suns reserve coach in 2014. Josh Fraser then came back to Victoria in 2016, where he took up a development role under Brendan Bolton, where he also acted as the VFL coach. He would remain at the club until 2020. At this point, the Northern Blues VFL club was split off from Carlton, and he would move over to the Northern Bull Ants. For those that weren't around or, up to date with things at the time, this was essentially the same club minus the affiliation to Carlton. So he basically went from being the affiliates senior coach to, the split offshoot community club in the VFL under the Northern Bull Ants moniker, and this started in 2021. Fraser then moved to Collingwood to take charge of the VFL team in 2022, as well as being their head of development. As we know, he then came back to us at the end of last year as our forward line coach, before reeling off 10 wins in 13 games as caretaker and getting us into the wild card before being appointed as our permanent senior coach. While I do have some minor reservations, I wanted to start with the positives, as this is obviously, a joyous day for Carlton fans everywhere. Firstly, I do have a lot of firm trust in Graham Wright, Chris Davies and Rob Priestley. I think since they came in as the trio driving our club, we have consistently made good decisions. I know not everyone's going to agree with me with, the list that I'm about to give, but to me, there's three big decisions that they have had to make in their time. The first one was whether or not to keep Michael Voss going into this season. If you want a full explanation as to why I thought this was the right decision, please see my last video. However, just to give a very short summary, it allowed Michael Voss to have to shoulder a lot of the hard work in terms of retooling the list, in terms of trying to fix the culture of the club, in terms of trying to change the game style of the team. Now, he ultimately wasn't successful, but it meant that a lot of the heavy lifting had to be done by someone else. Additionally, I think that it helped contribute to the rehabilitated image of our club, as I think the present view is that we are much more stable than this time last year. Our image has been slowly improving over this time, but I think the fact that we didn't sack Voss allowed him to see out, most of the end of his contract. He then said he resigned. We'll leave the speculation on that to the side. I think that has, put us in a position now where not only the voices outside of the club speaking quite well of us, in a period where there was only really two coaching jobs going. I think the Tassie job was always going to go to an ex-senior coach. Us versus Essendon, three of the hottest assistant candidates on the market that everyone thinks eventually will get a senior coaching position, said, I'm all in on Carlton, forget your Essendon. Now, part of that could have been because of how Essendon's decided to conduct itself, but I think it is also contributed to by how the three men I mentioned, Graham Wright, Chris Davies and Rob Priestley, have been able to rehabilitate our image. And keeping Vossi, I do think, was the first step in that process. However, I don't really want to mention our ex-coach too much more. There'll be a little comparison later on, but for the most part, we got a new man at the helm, so let's leave the past in the past. The second big set of decisions that the trio of men I commented on just before had to make were in last year's trade period. Again, I feel they did a really good job in terms of managing what was a very difficult period. We had two guys leaving free agency and a two-time Coleman medalist say that he wants out. However, I think that they did very well to stock the cupboards filled with high draft picks. They shedded literally millions of dollars in salary, and they made some very shrewd acquisitions in terms of mid to low priced players, most notably Will Hayward, Ollie Florent and Ben Ainsworth. And in addition to that, they found ways to get Jack Eisen and Taylor Byrne at the back end of the draft while securing Harry Dean. So, period number 2 ticked off as far as I'm concerned. The most recent big decision they've had to make, and the third of the three, is obviously appointing a senior coach. This was a massive decision, and it appears that not only have they made a good decision, but they have made the decision well, in the sense that they followed a process that actually allowed them to appoint someone that you can have a lot of confidence in. Additionally, there have been so many good reasons to appoint Frase. The turnaround on field is remarkable, but I feel like a lot of the time results on field occur due to what you're doing during the week. It's not about being outcome focused. Prepare well, strategize well, and you'll give yourself the best chance every game to have success. He's breathed life back into the place. If you look at someone like Paddy Cripps, I'm old enough to remember at the start of the year, people saying that we needed to trade him. Not speculation on whether, should you let him go if he asks to leave? Is he falling out of love with the... No, must trade him because he was apparently over the hill. Well, he's probably going to win our BNF, and worst case, I think probably come top 3. But it doesn't just end there. Guys like Adam Chera, Blake Acres and George Hewitt have all got back into form under Josh Fraser. And given those are 3 senior players, that's vital. I think Josh Fraser's decision to move Harry into the ruck on a more permanent basis than Vossi would do. Fraser's consistently thrown Harry into the ruck every game that he's played. I think that has helped to revitalise him, and more shared responsibility in the forward line due to Harry's, intermittent absences has really helped, I think, guys like Brody Kemp and Mitch McGovern, who have both had career years at the club. Literally career years. Both of them this season. That's fantastic work from Frase. Role players like Lewis Young and Frankie Evans have improved their output, and while Lewis currently finds himself out of the team due to configuration, guys like him, I have a lot more faith if they do come back into the team that they'll be able to fulfill their roles. Young guys like Billy Wilson and Taylor Byrne are thriving, and that's on top of the usually mentioned young blokes in Jagger Smith and Harry Dean. Side note, well done Jagger and Harry on making the 22 under 22 side. Additionally, the adjustments to game style have been great in terms of helping us to attack better, which in turn has helped us defend better. I know this can be a bit of a chicken or egg situation, but let me tell you why I think the order goes. Better offense has helped our defense. I think the most notable improvement in our offense is our ability to change gears. Under Michael Voss, this season we averaged just under 80 uncontested marks per game. Under Fraser, this has gone up 25% to 100 uncontested marks per game. This does 2 things. The first is an increase in time in position. In other words, time you don't have to actively defend. It gives your defense time to set up, but it's not hard efforts. It's not trying to chase someone down. It's just get into position so if there's a turnover, we're not completely rooted. It also gives you more opportunities to be able to slice through a defensive zone. This to me has been the biggest area of improvement on offense. There are so many moments where you see us moving the ball across the half back line only to then pull the kick inside the corridor because someone has been freed up, as the zone has shifted and someone has found a soft spot in it. Then you can move the ball quickly. The gears that I'm referring to, once you're in a position in the corridor, you're able to move the ball a lot more quickly because firstly, your defense is now settled behind the ball, but you're also in the most dangerous part of the ground. You can go laterally if you want, and you can go directly if you want. And the forward line also gets to be a lot more open in terms of you're not just attacking via one lane because you're committed to the boundary. All avenues to goal are now open. Additionally, when coupled with still being a top 6 team in terms of stoppage to score across the whole season, we can now score via both stoppages and ball movement, which is a massive improvement, whereby previously we'd only really been able to consistently generate scores from stoppage. So the improved offense means that we are, more versatile than we have been previously, but it also is giving a lot more of a reprieve to a defense that was, under the hammer at the start of the season. Furthermore, Frase emphasised from day one his focus on fundamentals. This jumps off the page when you read through our stats, as you see improvements from guys like Adam Chera, a 4% improvement in his kicking efficiency from last year. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but, that means over 100 kicks, 4 more are now hitting the target than they were previously. So I think he went up from 64 up to 68%. Sam Walsh has increased by 7%. Blake Acres has improved by 15%. And George Hewitt has improved by 12%. When you see from, 4 of your main on-ball types all having vastly improved kicking efficiencies year on year, you can see the absolute difference that makes in terms of our ball movement. I said in my last video, I don't think that they've necessarily got any better at kicking. I don't think their mechanics have changed. I don't think that they've, necessarily learned anything new. But taking a lot of reps in something will improve your confidence. So if Frase has lived to his word, and it appears that he has, of making skills work a more of a focus at training, you can totally see why guys will have more confidence to take on kicks when they need to. But in addition to that, the adjustments to the game plan means that not every kick has to be the most difficult one. So guys get an opportunity to find a few easy kicks by, doing switches, by finding easy short 45s, before then needing the confidence to pull the trigger. I think Adam Chera is the best example of this. He might have the smallest increase in terms of his kicking efficiency, but in terms of the damage that the eye test tells you that he's having, he is one of our best game breakers now. And it's also just wonderful to see, guys who have been in the competition for at least 8 seasons, Walsh is the youngest of the 4 blokes that I named, all showing signs of improvement this late into their career. That's really nice to see. In addition to that though, one thing that I think has really helped set the tone around the place is Fraser's humility. Unlike some people that are currently the coach of St Kilda, Josh Fraser was happy to go through a formal application process. Novel, I know, having to apply and be interviewed for a job. He had to do a multiple hour presentation just like anyone else. The club said that he would have been considered the best candidate based on his performance in the, interviewing process, even without his interim performance. Now, between you and me, because it's only you and me here, I don't necessarily believe that that's all the way true. I do think that his record as an interim probably helped him get the job. However, I'll take them at their word. In addition to that, it was reported on Footy Classified last night that each of the 5 final applicants for our senior coaching vacancy were put through a questionnaire by Adam Simpson that involved 7 parts. And apparently Fraser performed the best in it. So how much you believe that he was definitely the best applicant without his interim coaching record being taken into account is up to you. But for mine, the fact that that's the messaging of the club and the fact that journalists are independently reporting how well he did during the process, it's not just a fluke. It's not just based on his interim record. I have genuine comfort that he did really well through the process. And then when you add that to how well he did as an interim, that basically seals the deal on its own. Just to be really clear, these reports about how he did during the process does not mean everything, but it does show his overall competence to go beyond being an interim coach to now being the senior coach, the full-time permanent senior coach. And I also just think it shows his wonderful humility in not doing what everyone said he should do, which is the joke that I'm sure you've all heard. He should go in, point to his coaching record and then leave, and that's his full interview. I think when you have a leader who has that level of humility, it encourages other people to maybe not be as defensive about feedback. And we all know a bunch of people who left our club last year who were sensitive about feedback. So not only did he do well during the process, he demonstrated tremendous values, and I think that those are going to set him up really well going forward. However, I don't think I'd be honest if I didn't at least acknowledge a little reservation that I have in relation to Josh Fraser's appointment. There's going to be plenty of channels, plenty of media people running around saying this is the greatest thing since sliced bread with no reservations whatsoever. However, I do have a small one, and I wanted to raise it just in case other people feel the same way that I do. The decision was obviously made in the context of enormous momentum. And what I mean by that is decisions made in momentum are not necessarily bad, but they have obviously been influenced and impacted by something other than a cold, hard assessment of the facts as it stands. We can all agree that, at the end of last year, Josh Fraser was not going to be a candidate for the senior coaching job. Graham Wright said as much during their presser yesterday. So I think we can just take them at their word that Josh was probably not likely to be included in this sort of process. For example, had we sacked Vossi at the end of last season, even at the start of his tenure as interim coach, I don't think he was a serious candidate. So obviously the momentum of what he was able to achieve in the seat led our decision to change from what it otherwise might have been. We have seen decisions made on the back of momentum not work out before, such as Rhys Shaw at North Melbourne and David Teague for us. I'm not saying this is the same situation. Frase has a lot more runs on the board as an interim than both of them, and he apparently has done excellently well during the application process. I am just saying that decisions based on momentum, they make me a bit uneasy, despite so many of the facts being in Josh's favour. However, this is a day of celebration, so I only wanted to raise the small reservation that I had just in case other people feel the same. Because to me, it is more than okay to have mixed feelings about something. Like, a lot of people will get caught up in the hysteria. If you feel a bit uneasy about it, fair enough. I do just want to say that if I had to put, rankings on it for myself, I am, let's say, 90% really happy about this and 10% anxious, which for me is way less anxious than I normally am. So I'm going to take it as a massive win. So with my slight bit of trepidation out of the way, no more negativity in this video. This is a fabulous result for our club. It's getting universal approval outside of the club, which, while it doesn't matter in terms of, their approval doesn't mean anything, it is nice to have a lot of pressure off the club for once, so I'll take that. I think the entire process seemed to have been run really well, from what I can see on the outside. They played the media extremely well. you know, they were playing it like Garfield Sobers back in the day. It should give Carlton people a lot of comfort that if nothing else, we are not being run by fools. Graham Wright, Chris Davies and Rob Priestley, now with Josh Fraser in there as well, seems as united of a quartet in the most important positions of our club as I think we have had in a long time. So, where to from here? Firstly, it would be lovely if we could try to finish the season off strong. We're going to have 2 really hard games. Beating Fremantle will be a massive fill-up for the club, and winning a wildcard game regardless of who it's against would also be massive. I'm ridiculously excited for both games, and I hope we can cap off our season doing something that frankly was real, like, it's unexpected now. Forget how unexpected it was 13 weeks ago. So, it would be lovely if we could get some jobs done there, but we're going to have to wait and see. However, I do think expecting more than, maybe just being super competitive in these last couple of games, maybe winning one or both of them is a bit unfair. People hoping that we go on a massive run, I appreciate your optimism, but expecting it, I think, is a little bit far. We only just snuck into the finals due to the introduction of the wild card, mind you, and given the handicap put on us through the first 9 games, thanks Bossy, it's a miracle that we're even here. Secondly, my favourite time of the year is just around the corner, and it is not the finals. It is the trade season. I think we will now see a massive acceleration in terms of rumours and recruiting. Carlton's done a really good job throughout the year of keeping its cards close to its chest, not just with recruiting, but in general, with very little getting out to the media. The boys on Gettable are already indicating that we will likely ramp up our pursuit of Kel Shadir now that we have a coach, and I reckon a few other pursuits may heat up, for example, Brian Myers or Joel Amadi, because with all the goodwill around our club, now is probably the time to strike. And we have a little bit of time in reserve ahead of when the trade period begins in mid to late October. I think we also have a lot more clarity in terms of who will be re-signed and who may be moved on. However, that is for my next video, barring any other major announcements. My next video, I do intend to discuss our contracted players and a trade update in general. However, that is going to do it for me today. If you like what I'm doing, please give me a like or a subscribe. If you want to engage, push back, agree, disagree, give me some ideas, please leave a comment. If you want to contact me, you can reach me at blueskindshow@gmail.com, or like I mentioned, put something in the comments. Thank you everyone for watching. Congrats, Josh Fraser. Congrats, Harry Dean and Jagger Smith. And as always, go Blues!